Hello, welcome to my safe space. My name is Lena, and on my channel I talk about my childhood traumas and how they affected me in my adult life. In today's deep dive, I would like to talk about the issue of shame that follows us victims of CSA throughout our lives. I am no stranger to feeling shame and guilt about what happened to me. I had been ashamed of the very fact that I was essayed by my father for 5 years until I was probably around 33, 35 years old. So quite recently, I was finally able to win the fight because I fought the shame that I had about it for so long. I got tired of it. I just want to talk about not techniques maybe, but what helped me, basically what helped me get rid of this shame. And it's a couple of things. So number one thing is books. I've read multiple books on the issue, like The Body Keeps the Score is the famous one, or Hush, for example. I recommended it in some other video. And I do think that reading books or even watching videos like my own do help victims like myself, or survivors, whatever word you prefer. I don't mind either. I'm not ashamed. Like I said, I'm not ashamed of the word victim. I feel like the stigma about the word victim comes from the place of shame. So I'm not ashamed of saying that I'm a victim. That's what I am, and it's not shameful. But it took me years, many years, to come to this conclusion that it's not shameful to be a victim of CSA, and it's an okay term to use towards myself. But if you are sensitive about the word, I apologize. I use the words interchangeably. I use these terms, victim and survivor, interchangeably. To me, they mean the same thing. But if they don't mean the same thing to you, please forgive me. But I just want to emphasize on the fact that being a victim is not shameful. So reading books helped me because I opened this whole new world to myself, that apparently I'm not the only one who was a victim of CSA. The thing about shame that surrounds CSA is that people don't talk about it because it's so shameful, that it creates another problem, that we're covering the bad people, by not talking about it. That's how I look at it. That's how I began to look at it. And that's one of the reasons why I finally realized that no, it's not shameful, and actually believing in it being shameful helps the perpetrators. It helps the pedophiles. It helps the abusers. That if we continue being ashamed of what happened to us, it's going to continue happening, because the abusers will know that a victim is never going to tell anyone because they're so ashamed that this happened to them. So they take advantage of that very fact. That's kind of the logic that I discovered for myself with it after reading books and after doing some research online and self-digging and, internal work and looking inward and trying to understand myself and why I feel a certain way about being a victim of CSA. You know, like it took me a long time. So maybe this video will help you to cut corners and kind of get to that point faster. I really do hope that it helps. But so one issue, like I said, is that we're helping inadvertently the abusers to continue abusing children by spreading the narrative that it's shameful. Like I was telling you in another video about the Reddit post where somebody commented that why are we showing the face of this girl that was a victim of her dad who drugged her and her in a hotel, and she was like 18 or 19 years old, and she was okay with talking about it openly, and the person commenting did not know that. So they were basically confronting the journalist or the magazine who wrote about it, that why are they even showing the face of the victim. And I commented, ask yourself, why do you think it's not okay to show her face? I wanted them to think. I didn't receive an answer, but if they saw my comments, which I hope they did, I hope they thought about it. Like, why is it that we should have hid her identity for her own sake? Because why? Because what? What's going to happen if we find out? If her employer find out, is she going to lose job because she was raped by her dad? Is she going to lose friends? Is nobody going to date her? Are people going to look differently at her? Why should she be ashamed? And if people are going to look differently at her, maybe because of that shame, that we all believe in this creature called shame, that it's so scary that you should never let anyone know that you were essayed because it's so shameful. Why is it shameful? The abuser should be ashamed, not the victim. Like that French woman, forgive me for not knowing her name, but the one that had a husband who drugged her and let all these men do whatever they pleased with her body while she was unconscious. She specifically went out in public to talk about this. Thank you, lady. I'm sorry I don't know her name. I'm really bad with names, actually, but she's the hero of this whole movement, you know, anti-SA movement. That should be a movement. Well, I guess it kind of became a movement when the Me Too thing started. So thankfully there is some attention brought to the issue. So thankfully women are starting seeing SA for what it is. Not something that you should be ashamed of as a victim, but something that we should shame for the abusers. They should be shamed for it. If a person is a victim of any other crime, we tend, I mean, there's exceptions, there are idiots who will still victim blame, but we tend not to blame them for what happened to them, for the most part, you know. Like if you got hit by a car, by a drunk driver, you don't get blamed for that. The attention is on the driver. They are the bad guy in the situation. If you got your hand cut off in the machinery at work, you're not the bad guy here. Who gets sued? Not you for being stupid, but the employer for whatever OSHA regulations that weren't followed. You know, I don't know. usually in all other crimes, the victim is not ashamed of being the victim of that crime. You know, if you're a victim of a scammer, even then, for the majority of cases, you are not blamed for being scammed, because anybody can be scammed. You just gotta get to the right scammer, you know, who knows the psychology a little better than some other scammers that tried to scam you before and failed, you know. But everyone can be scammed, just needs to be approached in a correct manner, you know. So we don't shame those people. Even the drug addicts have a courtesy of not being shamed, you know. Like, oh, there must be something wrong, or freaking drug dealers on the streets, or a person might have been depressed, or they're from an unstable family, or there's something wrong, something that happened to this person that caused them take these drugs and become a drug addict. You know, like there is always an explanation. We don't hide those people's faces, you know. We don't think they should be ashamed necessarily. What the hell? Why are we supposed to be ashamed? Why am I, a person who was molested by my own dad, be ashamed? Why should I be ashamed? Can somebody explain it to me? Why? Like, I'm not even trying to be like confrontational about it. But like, seriously, can somebody tell me why? Why should I be ashamed that I was a victim of CSA as a child? I don't understand. I really don't understand what's so shameful about it anymore. Why did I feel ashamed in the past? Because I was groomed by my dad to believe that I wanted to be abused by him, that I enjoyed it. I was groomed to believe that this is what I asked for. So yes, I was ashamed. I was ashamed that my dad and I had this thing between us. It's gross, you know? It's freaking gross. I always knew it was a wrong thing. I always knew it was gross. I didn't want people to know that I was participating in this incest thing, you know? That is why I was ashamed. But I failed to see that it's not something I ever wanted. It's never been. My dad groomed me to believe that I wanted to be abused, you know? It just took me too long to finally understand this, because I knew for a very long time that it was a wrong thing to do, that I didn't want to be abused, you know, that I only enjoyed some parts of it in the beginning, you know, when I was really, really deeply groomed. You know, that's what it takes. You're groomed to the point that you enjoy your abuse, that you even seek for it, you know. Like, I would come to my dad at night to be abused, you know. It didn't happen often, but I did in the beginning stages. That's what I wanted, because my dad made me believe that if I didn't do these things, that I wouldn't be loved. So of course I wanted to be loved. So I come back and I'm like, yeah, I want to be loved, you know, because I wasn't loved, and he knew it. Those people, not just him, those people, they know who to target. Kids that are at a disadvantage of some sort. They are abandoned or neglected or physically abused, or something is going on in their life that makes them susceptible to grooming. So my dad, of course, knew my whole story, and of course I was a perfect victim for him or anybody else. It's just he was the one who took advantage of the situation. And it took me too long to finally disconnect from the part where I believed that I should be ashamed because I participated. I took part in my own abuse, because it takes two in CSA. You know, it always takes at least two people, the abuser and the victim. And I saw myself as a participant. You know, I saw myself as a person who is a part, you know, that took part in this incest. So I was ashamed of that. And I thought that it was my fault for the longest time, and at some point I even thought it was my fault, that I didn't stop it sooner. You know, I could have stopped it, but I didn't. Like, what's wrong with me? Why was I so dumb? Like, I was ashamed of that I took so long to put a stop to it, because I started, you know, rejecting his advances. But quite honestly, it took so long. I remember not enjoying it and doing everything in my power to stop him from doing it, including not washing my private parts for days on end on purpose. You know, that didn't stop him either. Or I would refuse to come visit him or things like that. You know, like I would try to minimize contact with him, but nothing helped. You know, nothing helped. So I realized that I couldn't have done anything better. I could not have helped myself in that moment more than I had, you know. So once you realize that you're not alone in this, that you're not the only person in the whole world that was a victim of CSA as a child, you are not, unfortunately, you're not the only one, but fortunately, there is a community out there that will support you, that will understand what you're going through, you know. Once you realize that you were groomed to like it, or you were a part of it, because it takes two, like you couldn't have not been a part of it, but it doesn't mean that you initiated it. You couldn't have. You were groomed. So that's when I started understanding more about it, more about all those feelings that I had, that I shouldn't be ashamed of it. I am a victim. This is why I'm so okay with using this word, is because it helps me separate myself from this crime. You know, for me, I would even argue that the word survivor kind of romanticizes the CSA. I survived. Like, I survived the earthquake. Like, there's something good in everything that happens to us. In every bad story, a happy ending. Like, this is the good part, that I survived the CSA. You know what I'm talking about? The word survivor to me kind of romanticizes CSA. That's why I don't use it as much as I use the word victim for that reason. But I use them interchangeably still, mostly for other people, so that people don't get offended, or that I recognize that it's a sensitive word. A victim is something that people don't want to be, and there's different views at what the word means, and that it gives power to the abuser, that now you're their victim. And you know, I don't agree with the power thing narrative. I think it gives us power when we are not the ones feeling ashamed. I think it gives us power when we are not afraid that somebody is going to find out. This is not the reason to be ashamed. You are not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your friends. I'm telling you, you're not. Family, maybe. If they take your abuser side, if the abuser is part of family, yeah, you might lose your family, but you don't want family who takes your abuser side. So not a big loss there. But life gets better when you start talking about it. It really does, big time. When you start talking about it, when you are open about it, when you're not ashamed of it anymore. Like, this is why I'm talking about it on YouTube, because I'm not ashamed of it anymore. Yeah, I don't talk about it to everyone. I don't tell everyone. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it's kind of TMI, you know? Like, why would I want to tell them and for them to get all depressed and think about this stuff? You know, they're not in this bubble where I am in with the CSA algorithm. You know, with, like, literally my algorithm will show me videos about CSA. You know, I don't want to subject innocent people to this subject. You know what I'm saying? But I do want to help other victims, and that's why I'm here. And I hope that my arguments helped you see that being ashamed is not something you want to be. I am not sure how to change your mind about it, but I wish that we were not ashamed in the first place, but it's impossible. And honestly, the more you talk about it, the less shame is left. I don't know how it works, but it's true. It's true that you need to talk about it, to let it out, to let more people know. And then when it's no longer a secret, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Because you're mostly ashamed of it because no one knows. And what if somebody finds out? And they're going to reject me and whatever the consequences might be. Don't worry about that. If they reject you because of what happened to you when you were a child, you don't want those people in your life. You know, just be smart about who you surround yourself with. I don't think we should be ashamed of ourselves, of what happened to us, of our past. We did nothing wrong. The abusers should be ashamed and be scared and tremble that we're actually going to go and talk about it on YouTube. Let's not give them power, is what I'm trying to say. Let's take the power away from them and show them that we're not ashamed, we're not scared to show our faces, and that they should be ashamed and scared to show their faces. Because if we continue this whole thing with shame, dude, like, it's going to continue happening to our children and to children of our children. It's the manipulation of the whole thing. Like, they're manipulating us. And the people that play this game, play by the rules, and also try to shame people who talk about it online, they're helping the abusers. You know, they're not helping us. And I hope they see this video and understand why it's wrong to think that way. I really think that it is. Anyway, thanks for being here today, for listening to my deep dive. I hope this video helped you in some way or shape or form, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.